Here we are again at the end of the year, filming the annual review. And if there was one video that I filmed every year that healed me the most, it is this video. It was the same last year as the same this year, and I think this year is even more so. Because this year I forgot a lot that happened. So much happened this year. And coming into this video, I didn't know how this was gonna go, because I think I had two very different halves to this year. But looking back and reading over my journal, I really do feel a lot more positive about this year than I did beforehand. So, what happened this year? At the beginning of this year, I really just started finding my footing again with Christianity. And so I still had a lot of questions. I still had a lot of things that I wasn't sure of, but I was finding my way. And I tell you what, when I got baptized, which I think might have been in March, that was a huge, huge part in my life because it really marked a new chapter. 2023, especially the last half of 2023, I was an atheist, which was very hard mentally for me, not just the fact of losing my faith, but for the fact that I had to keep that private because of the fear of judgment that I would feel from my family, not because they're bad family by any means, but because of, I think that anyone is a Christian, anyone that is oh my gosh, anybody that is a Christian who would have their kid come to them and tell them that they're atheist, I think that would very much bother anybody. And I think it would bother me if I was in their position. And so I just didn't want to bother them with it. And I think it wasn't that virtuous. I think it was more of I just didn't want to go through the pain of telling them because I knew what that conversation was going to look like and I knew how that was going to make me feel. And I was already going through other stuff at the time with my self-image and with the way that I felt about myself and the way that I spoke to myself and imposter syndrome and all that. And I just didn't want to add something on top of that at that point in my life. But I knew that it was going to be an inevitable conversation. And so that conversation eventually did come around. And then I stepped back into Christianity. But that was not a quick thing for me. And I don't think it should be. But I think it can be, but I don't think it should be. And it just took a lot of answered questions, took a lot of time, a lot of thinking, a lot of personal self-work to get to where I am now in my faith and to get to where I was back in January, which is so radically different from where I am now. But following those first few months of the year was huge in terms of my development with Christianity. And when I got baptized, that marked a new chapter in my life. And I have to say that in those months, I have never, ever felt more present and more grateful, ever. And now, and many times throughout the ending of this year, I have longed to feel that way again. And we will get into this later, but I lost that. And I don't know if that's bad and I don't know if that's wrong. Because to be honest, that feeling that I had at the beginning of this year when I first stepped back into my faith and when I was really, really growing in relationship with Christ for the first time, I have never felt more fulfilled. I have never felt more satisfied. I have never felt more present than in those first few months of the year. And just reading my journals from those months, it's evident and I can feel it and it brings me back to how I really felt at that time. And it truly was an amazing part of my life. Because once it took off, it really took off. And once I got baptized is when it really took off. And I just poured myself into it. And that was the beginning of this year. Stepping back in to Christianity. But what also was happening at that time and began to happen, like I said, I had those very blissful first few months. But after those first few months, I did begin to have struggles, like everybody does. And one of those early struggles was falling back into a lot of the old habits that had radically stopped once I put my faith in Christ. Before then, I was cussing a lot, had a lot of really bad thoughts, a lot of lustful thoughts, a lot of problems with lust in general. And all of that radically stopped once I put my faith in Christ. Radically. Like, I never thought I would have stopped cussing. I never, because it just always seemed like it would be so hard because it was so ingrained. And it all radically stopped. But as time continued on, I began to fall back into some of those old habits. And I was so hard on myself. I'm already very hard on myself with things like work, with basketball, with my just worldly achievements and dreams that I chase after. And so now the new biggest thing in my life is Christianity and following this almighty, powerful God. And so now I'm failing him in my mind. I remember just going to bed and just being so sad and depressed and frustrated with myself because of how disappointed I was in my performance. I couldn't grasp that God loved me no matter what. His love never changed for me, never faltered in those moments. But I am a smart person, you know? And many times in my life I've said the opposite. And a lot of times I feel the opposite, but I am a smart person. And so I even knew that at the time. Even though I didn't feel it, even though I didn't accept it, I did know at the time that what I was doing and thinking and telling myself was wrong. But I couldn't seem to change my reality or my mindset or the way that I thought or talked to myself to the right course of action. I just seemed stuck on what was wrong, knowing that it was wrong and knowing the right way that I should go about it, but I couldn't seem to go about the right way, if that makes sense. And it might not make sense because I don't even know if it fully makes sense to myself, but I think that's the best way to explain it. And I think it explains it quite well, actually. And what happened later on was that I decided to indulge in bad habits willingly. And that, I think, was a huge mistake because I am still dealing with the repercussions of that one decision. And it really, really shipwrecked me, to be completely honest. I didn't think it would. And for a lot of this year, and even up to recently, I lived in denial that it did. But look, the year is coming to an end. I'm filming my end of the year video. This will probably be the last video of this year. We're here to be honest, and I'm going to be honest with myself. That was one of the biggest mistakes that I made this year when it came to my relationship with Christ, was willingly going back into those bad habits, trying to make two wrongs make a right. That is what I was doing, and I failed miserably with making that work, I do believe. There was a hint of hope, and I think there was a little fairy dust, a little glitter, a little sparkle of success in that, because I am no longer hard on myself. I am no longer hard on myself when it comes to mistakes. But the mistakes that I make are way more now than they were back then. And I have fully, not partially, not a little bit, fully fallen back into some of the bad habits that I was doing back in the day. All because of that one decision to try to dip my pinky toe into the old version of myself that God so graciously made easy to remove when I put my faith in him originally. But I had free will, and he gave me free will, and I abused that free will. But like I said, I am no longer hard on myself, and that is something positive to take away from that. But that is one positive thing out of a sea of problems. So that one decision made on my life. And my relationship with Christ still struggles because of that one decision that I made. And I think that's why I've had two very different halves to my year, to be completely honest. The beginning half of this year, super close with Christ. Second half of this year, more so like last third of this year, not that close with Christ. not very distant, but really lost so much of the feeling that I had in the beginning, so much of the fiery spirit that I had in the beginning. I just lost a lot of that, a lot of the passion. I don't feel the relationship as much as I used to. Not that, because Christ never changes. Christ has never forsaken me. He has never distanced himself from me. But I think that just the decisions that I've made have hurt our relationship, and I have not watered and taken care of the relationship, and it has suffered. And I think that is why this last third of the year has been so difficult mentally for me, because one, I haven't been honest with myself until really just now, and just a lot of confusion. I didn't understand why I didn't feel God, and I didn't understand why I didn't have the relationship, and I didn't understand what happened. But I also didn't want to change, because I still don't know what is the right course of action. Because when I was living the other way, I was super hard on myself, was very legalistic. I was very, very cut off. I didn't allow myself any lenience, and I was so not mentally comfortable. But now I feel like I'm on the other side, and I'm back to where I was, not feeling mentally comfortable, still battling with beating myself up and being hard on myself. And over here, I was beating myself up and being hard on myself because the relationship didn't feel very free. I didn't feel, I don't know. I don't know why I was beating myself up here. I don't know why I was being so hard on myself. I think I just wanted to prove to myself that the relationship wasn't bound to my performance, and that I would be loved, and that God would never forsake me no matter who I was. I think that was what I was trying to prove. And I do remember thinking that at the time. And I do remember also at the time of making that decision, I mean, I was sitting on that bed, staying up late when I really made the decision, just talking to myself. And I really do remember having to do some persuading with myself, just a lot of deep thinking on why I was making this decision. But in the end, I did make the decision. And sometimes you just have to make decisions and see where they lead you. And this decision was a bad decision in the long run, when you really weigh up the pros and the cons. But one pro did come out of it, I guess. But now my goal going into 2025 is reviving my relationship with Christ, but also not being so hard on myself. That was a long chapter of the story of this year, but it was a very, very important chapter. And I think I already feel better about it, getting a lot off my chest. And I'm grateful for this experience. Even though it hurt really, really bad and caused me a lot of pain, I am glad that I made that decision at the beginning of the year. Even though it was a mistake, I am glad that I made that mistake and was able to learn from it. Whew. That was a big one. Let's go into another big one. Like I said, I did forget a lot of what happened at the beginning of the year, but looking back at my journal and reading some of my journal entries from that time, it brought back a huge thing that happened this year in terms of personal growth. So if you follow self-improvement online, you might know of a guy named Hamza or Hamza Ahmed. When I first got into self-improvement at 14, this guy was the guy to self-improvement. And I was a desperate little kid at that time, just trying to get out of the terrible mental health and the terrible, just trying to get out of the terrible space that I was mentally at the time. And so when I stumbled upon self-improvement, Hamza seemed like this guiding light to where I wanted to be in life, teaching me how to be more confident, how to be more attractive, how to be a better man in general. And like I said, at this point in my life, my faith was mainly just living off of my parents' faith. I wasn't an atheist at this point in time, but I did become an atheist continuing on down the line. But like I said, I discovered Hamza and I latched myself onto him. Listened to everything he said and took it and followed it religiously. I mean, I took it and ran with it. And I'm not going to demonize him because, to be honest, I owe a lot of my early success to what he did and what he said. But man, that guy caused me some serious pain and some serious work later down the line when it came to unlearning a lot of what he said and taught and stood for. And unlearning it was way harder than learning it. Because this time I couldn't just go and watch a video and just ingrain the knowledge into me and move on with my life. And it wasn't that easy either with improving my life. It wasn't like I just watched a video and everything was ingrained and I just moved on and life was great. I did take work back in the day too, 100%. But unlearning the things that he taught was so much more arduous and so much more painful. And I had been following self-improvement in this whole community for a year or two at the beginning of this year. And so I knew my way around this niche and around this community. And I knew everything about like what it meant to be successful. Be rich, be confident, and be in shape. And if you weren't those things, that meant that you weren't successful and you weren't worthy of love. They didn't word it that way, but that is what it meant. You weren't worthy of praise. You weren't worthy of acceptance and love if you weren't those things. And I wasn't those things. But I was trying. I had this YouTube channel. And before this YouTube channel, I was doing other things. And especially at the beginning of this channel, I was doing other things. At the beginning of this channel, I was also running an email list. At the beginning or before this channel, I was learning how to build websites so I could start drop shipping. I never started drop shipping, but I learned how to build websites on Shopify. Before that, I was learning copywriting. I was learning how to run an agency, social media marketing agency. Like I have been through all these things. I was reading all the books. I think this year I've read 10 books. I think like 5 on business. Towards the end of the year, in the middle of this year, there's a lot on mindset, and those books really changed my life. But like I was working on this YouTube channel really hard. I was going to the gym super consistently every day before I go to sleep. I'm checking off things in my journal. And so I gave myself the ability to love myself when I was doing those things. When I was pushing forward and being successful, that's when I was proud of myself, I was loving myself, and I loved my life. But when I wasn't doing those things, my life sucked. Like, I was depressed. I was mad at myself. And at many times this year, my mind has been a very, very uncomfortable place to be. Very, very uncomfortable. Because apparently some people don't have an inner voice. If anybody has an inner voice, it's me. I have full-on conversations with myself in my mind, thinking very deeply about very deep things. And I ask tons of questions. And it's exhausting. And a lot of times it's really toxic. And it shouldn't be, but I'm working on that. Anyway, at the beginning of this year, at many times in my journal, I am a kid trying to play video games with my friends, trying to enjoy my youth like any kid should. And instead of being able to hop on the game and enjoy my youth with my friends, I not only hop on the game, but instead of having fun when I'm actually on the game, I'm on the game and then hating myself for it at the same time. And so it takes away any point in playing the video games in general. And that makes me so mad. And it's so sad looking back because I'm writing out, 6 pages on my journal about why I shouldn't play video games and how mad at myself that I am about it. I'm wasting time and I'm selling my potential. I'm never going to be successful because I played 3 hours of video games with my friends one day. How sad is that? a 16-year-old kid trying to have fun with his friends, but he can't have friends because of what Hamza said, what this guy on the internet said about how you should live your life and what it means to be successful, aka worthy of love and acceptance. And coming into this video, I didn't know really what this was going to look like. And I don't think I want to go into depth as much about it as I thought I was. But Hamza really hurt my life in so many ways. And I no longer have any connection to him. I don't watch any of his videos. I don't listen to anything he says because he has caused me so much pain when it comes to being myself. So many mindset changes, so many ways that I look at women, so many ways that I talk to myself, so many ways that I look at myself. I've had to change because I attached myself to the mindset of this man on the internet that I thought was the pillar or epitome of success. And he is not. And I was low-key happy when I saw that a lot of people online felt the same way. As time continued to move on, more and more people have recognized how bad his teachings really are. And if you look at Hamza now, it's really a sad thing of how stuck he is in his old mindset and how he is the same exact person he was, in my opinion, 3-4 years ago, or 2 years ago. And I think it's evident why his views have drastically gone down. Like I said, I owe a lot to him. I don't owe him anything. I don't owe anybody anything. But I will be gracious and say that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have moved as rapidly in the beginning in terms of success. And making that switch with so many mindsets later on in life when it came to loving myself and being lenient with myself and allowing myself to enjoy things just because I enjoyed them, not because they were successful, just because I want to live the way that I want to live and nobody's going to tell me how I can live my life and who I'm supposed to be. Making all those changes were so hard, and I would have never had to make those changes if they weren't for his teachings. He could have gone about it better. Maybe I could have gone about it better too. I think there was faults on both parts, but I had to get it off my chest because that is a big story of my life, and it's a big chapter of my life. And I thought it should be shared. And then probably the third biggest thing that happened this year in terms of growth was relationships and the way that I respect myself. And I've said this many times on my channel that relationships are like waves. You ride them. Relationships, and this has been something that I've had to teach myself so much, relationships are not like work. Relationships don't follow a set path. Relationships aren't, I don't know, I want to say linear, but I don't think linear is the right word. Relationships aren't simple. They're very, very complex. They're very amazing. They're very interesting. Very, very important. Might possibly the most important thing in life. But it is so different from everything else in life. It's a wild ride with relationships. And boy, I've had some wild rides. I don't know how much I want to say here because I think a lot of stuff I still don't know. And I think that in time I will have a lot more to say about this. A huge thing is just not letting people talk to me a certain kind of way. I'm not going to let people tell me who I am. Nobody in this world is going to tell me who I am. And I will stand on that till the day that I die. Nobody has the right to tell me who I am, who I will be, who I was. You have no idea who I was. You have no idea who I will be. You have no idea what goes on inside my mind. Do not tell me what I am. Not listening to people's opinions and not letting people share their negative opinions to me without me retaliating back. And something for me that is very hard is cutting relationships off. I hate goodbyes. I hate endings. And I don't think in relationships that it has to be that set in stone, because relationships aren't, I don't know, set in stone. I don't think relationships have to end that quickly. But I think that if you are getting disrespected, if your time is not being respected, take a step away. And you have to be okay with yourself to do this. You have to be comfortable with yourself to be able to do this. And that has been something that I've grown a lot in this year, is being comfortable with me. Step away and see what that does for the relationship. Because in that time away, I think a lot of growth happens. Because with distance comes desire. So when you distance yourself from somebody and they don't get you anymore, they begin to realize how much they really do treasure your presence in their life. And that desire begins to form again. When you give yourself to somebody else for free, you will be taken for granted. Your time is valuable. You have to recognize that. Your time is valuable. You are valuable. Do not give yourself out to everybody else if you don't get anything in return. And that is not selfish. If you go and give your precious time to building and cultivating a relationship with somebody else, and they do not reciprocate that value to you, if they don't praise you, if they're not there for you when you need them to be, if they're not building you up when you need to be built up, when you're feeling down about yourself, and you're there for them when they need that, please distance yourself from that person and see what happens. Don't be the first one to text every time. See if you're even texted at all if you're not the first one to text. If you're not texted at all, relationship's over, and be okay with that. You don't need that person in your life. But if you pull away and they continue to chase after you, that means they desire you. They value you enough to want you in their life. But just because they want you in their life doesn't mean that you should be in their life. If they want you in their life, but there's things in that relationship that hurt you, go talk to them about it. Be open with them. Do not be dishonest. Do not withhold things from them. Tell them exactly how you feel. Be tactful. Go about it the right way. Do your research and how you should talk to people. And then go. And see how they accept that. And depending on how that goes, the relationship will either begin to blossom again or nothing happens. And it's really sad when you enter a new season in a relationship. And I think relationships have seasons. And I don't think every relationship is supposed to last a lifetime. And I just think it gets to a point to where a relationship will never be how it was at its peak again. Everything has its peak. And I just think some relationships are never going to get to that peak again. And you have to be okay with that. And I think some relationships are just better when you spend less time with them. Because when you spend so much time with them, your time just begins to be devalued and taken for granted. And that means you're being devalued and taken for granted. And they begin to treat you in a way that is very, very harming to you as a person. And I hate this about my generation, that my generation thinks that it is super funny to make fun of other people and to hate on other people. And I'll raise my hand and say that I have taken part in this. And I think you do need to be strong enough to be able to take some heat and be able to laugh off a lot of stuff that comes your way. And I can do that. And I'm proud of myself for that. But it gets to a point to where it's disrespect. And it gets to a point to where it's personal. And it gets to a point where you should and need to take it personal. And you're not sensitive for saying that. And for sticking up for yourself. Respect yourself. Because if you don't respect yourself, nobody will respect you. And the way that people treat you is a byproduct of how they see you in their mind. And the way that you let people treat you is a byproduct of how you see yourself. Do not let people run you over and tell you who you are and what you are and how you should feel. You get to make those decisions. Don't let other people disrespect you and tell you who you are. Be comfortable with yourself. That is so important. And I don't love myself in the way that I should love myself, but I am going to do better in 2025, and I'm going to make leaps and bounds in this. I will not talk to myself the way that I talk to myself now at the end of 2025. I promise you. I'm so passionate about this because it has been so hard for me this year with relationships. And time after time again, sticking up for myself and praying and battling at night and being so sad and stressed and uncomfortable and confused on what I should do and what is the right course of action. Because I don't want to hurt anybody and I don't want to make a mistake. Sometimes, like I've already talked about, you just have to make a decision and see where that leads you. And it might lead you to a place you don't want to be, like we've already talked about. But yeah, so passionate about relationships and the way that you speak to yourself and talk to yourself, because that is huge. Because the way that you see yourself and the way that you talk to yourself will govern where you end up in life. Please do your best to make your mind a nice place to be. And I'm talking to myself, but I'm also talking to everybody out there who's listening. You are important and you will do all of the things that you set your mind to if you keep moving forward. Quitting is not an option. If quitting is not an option, you will succeed. And if you do not succeed, you will die trying. And that journey is an exhilarating, wonderful journey to live your life doing. Hopefully, that all sounds amazing and wonderful and spiritual and enlightening and epic. I hope it does. And I mean everything that I said in that. And I'm really passionate about it. So that's the 3 big things I think that I learned this year. So many smaller lessons that I had to learn. So many. But we don't have a whole year to talk about them. So last year, I wrote my annual review. And I haven't written it out yet for this year. But I just want to go over what I wrote out last year. And this video is going to be a long video, but it's for myself. And if anybody cares to watch it and finds it entertaining, that's stinking amazing. But this is for my own personal healing. Oh, and a quick tip about the podcast. I wrote in June that I was approaching the end and I was about to film the podcast. So it took me 7 months from buying the equipment and thinking that, oh, I'm right there. I'm about to film the first podcast. It took me 7 months to finally film it. Can you imagine the stress and the amount of just mind battles that I had to fight having all this equipment and thinking that I was going to film the podcast so many different times and telling so many different people like, hey, would you film the podcast? I went up to so many different people and told so many different people in my life that, hey, I'm going to be filming a podcast. Would you like to be on the podcast? Would you like to be on the podcast? And they were all like, yeah. And I was like, bet, we're going to film the podcast soon. And I never stinky filmed the podcast until just now. And so many of those people that I talked to never have been on the podcast yet. I reached out to Luke a few weeks before filming the podcast. And all these other people thought I was going to film a podcast back months ago, and I never filmed it. Can you imagine the disappointment that I feel in the amount of how bad I feel about that? I don't know. Moving on. But what would need to happen to make 2024 feel like a success? I said, make my first dollar through my online business. I have yet to make a single dollar through my online business. Does 2024 feel like not a success because I haven't done that? No, but it is kind of disappointing because I did think I was going to get monetized this year, but it's just how the cookie crumbles. Become good with conversation. Become good with conversating with girls. We've gotten better. 100%. I'm in a relationship, and it's absolutely amazing. That was a huge goal for this year. Regain the discipline that I once had, but with this new mindset / philosophy. Yeah, that was a big problem that I had this year. Was when I became a Christian, I lost a lot of the discipline that I had, and I have no idea why. But when I became a Christian and fully, was just obsessed with the teachings of Christ, I became a lot less disciplined in everything else in my life. I wasn't working out as much. I wasn't grinding YouTube as much. I wasn't reading other books as much because I was reading the Bible so much, and everything else in life just kind of took a big hit, and I wasn't as productive with everything else that I was before. And that was hard. So, did I do that? Did I regain the discipline that I once had, but with this new mindset of Christianity? Yes and no. I regained the discipline. The YouTube is going good. I am grinding. I've had many seasons of not grinding. Those were very hard. And I'm not even going to go into explaining how hard that was because I think it's very personal. Not many people would relate, but that was very, very hard on me. I'm not working out that much because of basketball. But I think what I was talking about here, yes, I did. I'm working on a lot of other things in my life again, and I'm also a Christian. Do I think I am succeeding at this 100%? No. But I think I made a lot of work and a lot of improvement on this. Not work, progress. 80 push-ups in a row. I don't know if I've ever done it, but I know that I definitely can do it. I just don't do push-ups that much. But I think the most push-ups I've ever done in a row was 70, but I definitely could have got 80. Read 10 books. Yes, I do believe I have read 10 books, but I'm not completely sure. And this is kind of fun, but it's also kind of shows you how my 2024 went. It was all right. 2024 has not been my favorite year of my life, to be completely honest. It was kind of a rough year mentally. There's so many ups and downs. It was not consistent. It was not a cruise emotionally. But it's very interesting to look back at all this stuff, to say the least. Not that it means a ton, because these are very loose answers and hopes for 2024. Doesn't bother me too bad. What could hold me back in my work this year? Shyness, authenticness, fear of being judged. It's crazy because we grew in all of that. I'm not very shy at all this year. I don't think I've struggled with shyness at all. I've struggled with nervousness, but I push through my nervousness. I don't let that cripple me. Inauthenticness, that is hard to say. I think I'm very authentic. And I think a lot of times I'm so authentic that I hate it about myself, and I'm very uncomfortable with my authenticness. I hate looking at myself on my YouTube videos a lot, to be completely honest. But I am authentic, and I say exactly what I want to say. And I tend to do exactly what I want to do and be what I want to be. Fear of being judged. I always fear being judged, but I've not let that hold me back. And I'm proud of myself for that. I am getting tired, 100%. I've been filming for an hour and 10 minutes as of at this time, and I am getting tired. But we're almost at the end. what are my plans for 2025? What do I want to do in 2025 off the top of my head? I want to get monetized on YouTube. That is just huge for me, is being able to get monetized on YouTube. It's been a dream of mine since I was a little kid. Like, I've been doing this YouTube stuff since I was 9 years old. I think the first video I ever filmed was in my old bedroom in my other house. It never got posted, never saw the light of day, but I'm reviewing fishing lures that I have in my tackle box off my mom's cell phone. I've been doing this for a long time. It would be a huge achievement to get monetized next year. And I think that is 100% doable. Considering this year I just started YouTube professionally, it has been a year on YouTube consistently, and we have gained over half the amount of subscribers that I need to get monetized. I have a lot of work to go when it comes to watch hours, but I'm one video away. If one video gets like 20,000 views and it's decently long, we will be monetized. That is epic. So exciting. I want to do that this year. It would be epic. Getting monetized on YouTube is huge. I want to speak on stage again, whether that be sharing my testimony, whether that be preaching. I don't know what it's going to look like. I want to get back up on stage, continue to grow my relationships, continue to develop and grow my relationships. Graduate from high school. Huge. Get locked in on the gym. Once all these sports are over, and they will be over before July of next year, before I turn 18, once all these sports are over, I am locked in on the gym, chasing aesthetics. That's such an exciting era. I'm so ready for my gym era. So ready. I've been in my gym era for a couple years now, but just haven't been able to be consistent with basketball and everything. But the time is near, and it is so exciting. And a huge thing for 2025 is the way that I talk to myself. I want to talk to myself so much better in 2025. I want to treat myself so much better in 2025. I think a huge thing, one of the biggest things that I want to do in 2025 is learn how to love myself. I want to look in the mirror and be happy with what I see. I want to learn to love my face. I want to learn to love my voice, and I want to be able to love my personality and my character. If I can do that, that will make me a better person in how I treat other people. It'll make me a more consistently happy person. If I can learn to truly love myself in every aspect, shape, and form, my life will improve. That is a huge thing that I want to do in 2025, is learn to love myself. And I think that is the end of this video. And that is the end of my annual review for 2024. 2024 has been a weird year, and I haven't loved 2024, to be completely honest. It's felt kind of off most of the time, and at least recently. But looking back, it has been a successful year, 100%. And I've grown so much. But it's been wonky, very split for like 3 different chapters. Really, definitely 2 halves of how I felt. But cheers to 2025, and I hope you're doing great. And I hope you continue to improve. And I hope if you watch this entire video, you found some kind of value in it, because it's basically just me yapping about my personal struggles in my life. But like I said, these videos, out of any video, heal me the most, and they really do help me going into the next year. So yeah, cheers, and thank you for watching. I hope you're doing great. I love you. Good luck. Goodbye.